Welcome back, my gardening friends. Well, I've been tagged in a little challenge of 5 tips in 5 minutes. So if you want to see how my tips on how to grow carrots like these and parsnips like this, then please continue watching. So tip 1, pallet collars. They come flat packed and are reasonably easy to get hold of if you know who, and they easily transform into a raised bed, and you can stack them up as high as you like. Four pallets high is my recommendation now for carrots. 5 high is for the parsnips, but you could go to 6, as Mrs. King does like a nice long parsnip. I've been tagged by William Coleman, Garden and Allotment, and he's challenging me to even get it to 5 minutes. We'll try our best. So, tip number 2. Carrots, parsnips and our root crops don't like manure, but where they do want it is right at the bottom. So basically I start off with a really good layer of manure, and then we build up with layers of compost that have got some nutrients in but not much at all. And then the last 6 inches will be from plain compost. We bore a hole out and then put cocoa coir and then plant 3 seeds. The taproot's there for a reason. Goes right down. Tip number 3, I've already covered that, but once you get to this stage, get a crowbar or a long dibber, a spade handle, and bore a hole down towards the manure, and then fill it full of cocoa coir. That way the plant, the parsnips or the carrots shouldn't fork because there's no nutrients. We put a yoghurt pot top there, and we put 3 or 4 seeds, and we remove the weakest to leave 1. Tip number 4, you get carrots like this. These tops have been cut off once before, and I'll probably have to cut them off again. We are in January, so it's nice to harvest parsnips and carrots at this time of the year, especially under the hungry months. So we have to cover them to stop the rain getting to them, else the cores can get really hard, typically the same as the dry. So by covering them, it keeps it reasonably moist. And my carrots, that these came out of here, they haven't got too many hairs on them, and the taproots are broke off. So that's tip number 4. Tip number 5, rejuvenating. Now I've got permanent beds. This isn't going to be my carrot bed. You'll see later on in late winter into spring how I build my new pallet collar raised beds. They'll be permanent. So how then do we get down to that manure base that has probably been spent? As we know, most of us gardeners mulch our beds with a nice little bit of well-rotted manure. It rains on that, and the liquids then out of that drain away. So I did a little experiment with the parsnips by boring a hole down into the manure, and then the liquid from the manure out of my manure runoff bins goes down to the bottom to rejuvenate it. So the old manure becomes new, and then our taproots will go down and feed on that and give us some really nice carrots. They don't all look like that, don't get me wrong. So just a little recap. Create yourself some raised beds, high enough so that the carrot root fly doesn't get into them, and I'm going for 4 pallet collars now because 3 pallet collars wasn't quite enough. either the grub or fly was already in the soil and I trapped them, and we still got the fly. But get them to a decent height, get a manure base in there, and then build up your layers with whatever you've got. Core out the holes, fill with compost, cocoa coir, whatever you can get, and remember to cover them during the winter to stop the rain splitting them and affecting the cores. And don't forget to rejuvenate with your liquid plant foods. So that's a big thanks to William Coleman, Garden and Allotment. And remember, these tap roots need to dive down and get those nutrients so that they don't end up looking like spiders. And if you've liked the content of this video, don't forget to consider subscribing if you want to follow my allotment journey. You can see how I make my liquid plant foods, how I store my manure over the 12 months before we reuse it again, and also how I'm creating 8 of these raised beds around this area, and then the square foot gardening along here, and some vertical gardening as well. And these pallet collars will end up running along the area in front of the polytunnel and all up this top end of the plot. And these will all be moved and reused, and I'll show you how we use plastic to keep these boards in tip-top condition. I've had these now 5 years, and you can see where it's touching the ground, they're rotting, but I'll show you how I actually stop this happening. The compost bins build, the quadruple bins, is built in the same way, just by raising them up, putting screws in the bottom of the pallets or wooden pegs to keep the water off them, and lining them with plastic. I notice everyone is tidying their polytunnels up. I'm filling mine up. There's the raspberry canes that I'm saving for my pea supports. That's for my long veg. I'm drying out some of those cloth pots from the compost. We've got our tomatoes stored in here, the seeds that have been put into the compost. Any other materials that we're getting, I'm going to try and I will be using these for the square foot gardening. It's free timber, swapped for some compost, and of course the pallet collars that I've been collecting over the last 18 months, 2 years, because I knew this project was coming along. It'll be glad to have me plot back. Well, in a previous video you'll see my massive cannabis compost find. Well, there's another 53 bags there, guys, and this is the sort of compost when sieved, the cocoa coir is ideal for the carrots to grow down. They don't need anything for a long time. And when I chip my seeds, they'll grow to a real good size before they actually need any nutrients. But this will help me fill my all the beds that we've got planned for this summer, spring or early winter, or late winter shall we say. So there's the 2 bags we filled up from a previous video. I've covered it over, don't want the compost to get too wet, and hiding there is some sieved cocoa coir. I'll just grab a handful. It's right at the top anyway, but it needs to be dry. But that's what I put down into for the carrots and the parsnips. Found that an ideal material. It does need to be wetted up once it's in the holes, else it'll be too dry. The plot 1 greenhouse is also full, and this is what we in a skip in bits, and luckily enough most of it was there. I thought, oh, it'll go in that greenhouse, but it's surprising how high it is. But that'll be an ideal drying rack for my onions, or sitting the seed trays on before we plant our stuff in the ground. But it's quite good actually. I'm hoping that'll last a long time. I would imagine it's very new. It was before the storms, so can't blame that. But no, great addition, and I've just put some cable ties on there to hold these racks in place to keep it nice and sturdy. Happy gardening to you all. I hope everyone is nice and safe after those storms that crossed the UK in the previous week. It's gone a lot cooler and possibly drier now, so we should be able to get a little bit of work done. Like I said earlier, if you like the content, please consider subscribing if you wish to see more of my videos. If not, thank you for watching and take care. Till next time, my friends. Ta-ra for now.